Thank you for joining me. We begin tonight with a massive blaze in Ignace that resulted in a highway closure. The fire sparked at 3 o'clock Tuesday morning at Grandma's Supermarket and Hardware along Highway 17. The store owned by Ignace Mayor Lee Kennard, who called the scene devastating, and the business was completely gutted. Grandma's is the only hardware store in that community and was one of only 2 grocery stores. Fire crews evacuated a motel beside the structure along with the nearby home, and the OPP closed the highway for several hours to allow firefighters to battle the blaze. There is no word yet on a possible cause. A new formula for communities policed by the OPP is being called a double-edged sword. Some municipalities like Marathon are anticipating a decrease in their payment, but others like Greenstone are staring down a 50% increase in their policing costs. Dennis Ward has more.
The Ontario Provincial Police are proposing a new billing model for charging municipalities for policing services. These changes are set to take effect January 1st, 2015. The new formula includes a flat rate per household, plus another fee for each call. Regional politicians have a mixed reaction to the new model. In Greenstone, costs are expected to increase by 52%. Mayor Ron Beaulieu calls that drastic and unrealistic for taxpayers.
I mean, we could be looking at paying up to close to $600 per household for policing costs, and there is no way we can this can happen. So we're definitely try to go and be heard about it, and hopefully that well, I know others will be involved in the same process as we are.
Policing makes up a huge chunk of the operating budget in the town of Marathon, roughly 25%. Mayor Rick Dumas believes the new OPP formula means good things for the town and taxpayers.
We're paying about $735 per household. We're hoping that with the base rate formula and the calls for service combined, we should see a reduction in Marathon for 2015 and going forward, down to about $450 per household. So it'll be a great savings to the municipality.
In Nipigon, each household currently pays about $500 for policing, but they can anticipate a slight decrease. Mayor Richard Harvey says the current system isn't very fair and makes little sense. He sympathizes with municipalities that will see a big jump, but he feels the new formula spreads costs evenly across the board.
We're going to see slight decrease, but one of the most frustrating parts is that in the past, with the way the policing formula worked, we had no idea how it was actually being determined. Now, what we're being assured, and we're waiting to see the details, is that we're going to actually know what's happening, and we'll be able to understand and clearly understand what our policing costs are.
Mayor Beaulieu says Greenstone will join the fight with many other municipalities who are seeing double-digit increases. He intends to raise the issue with cabinet ministers at the upcoming Good Roads Conference. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
After years of negotiations, officials with the Lake Helen First Nation have signed documents with the province which will see their reserve land mass triple in size. Chief Pierre Pelche says the larger land base will be positive for future economic development. The deal will see around 600 acres of land near Nipigon added to the Lake Helen First Nation. The town of Terrace Bay and A.V. Birla have reached an agreement on the assessed value of the local mill. Council in Terrace Bay voted on a deal Friday afternoon that will result in hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. Still, officials say it was the safest way to move forward and keep the town financially stable. The mill's current assessed value for 2013 was $23 million. A.V. Birla filed an appeal with the Assessment Review Board in an attempt to have the mill valued at just $2 million. But the two sides were willing to negotiate and have settled on a value of $15.4 million. The deal will cost the town $530,000 in annual tax revenue. Terrace Bay will also have to repay A.V. Birla $600,000. The town council will ask the province for financial assistance, and a draft plan on how to handle the lost revenue will be presented at an upcoming public meeting. Former Mayor Mike King stepped down late last year in opposition to those negotiations. He wanted to fight the reassessment. The sale of the Marathon pulp mill property has fallen through, and town officials are expressing frustration at the loss of economic opportunities from the cleanup of the industrial site. But as John Thompson tells us, the deal isn't dead just yet.
Nearly 5 years after a complex bankruptcy permanently closed the Marathon pulp mill, it looked like a deal to tear down and clean up the industrial site was at hand. The Illinois-based Green Investment Group had a deal to purchase the property in May of 2013 on the condition that it contribute $2 million to the $4.8 million previous owner Tembec is paying to clean up all known environmental damage. GIG was unable to produce its share by the January 23rd deadline, and Marathon Town Manager Brian Teixeira could do nothing but watch the process's clock turn back to zero.
It's disappointing, and I think at the end of the day, the straw that broke the camel's back here was the fact that the MOE had imposed an additional $2 million in financial assurance over and above what Tembec was required to commit, and Green Investment couldn't come up with the money. Council argued this point with the MOE, and at the end of the day, for whatever reasons, the $2 million in financial assurance stuck, and Green Investment couldn't come up with it.
Green Investment claimed to have had clients prepared to take on roles in recycling and generating energy from waste, which encouraged Mayor Rick Dumas. Now that the deal has fallen through, he sees the town's loss compounded by the loss of the economic development the cleanup would have brought to Marathon.
We don't have the opportunity we would have had with Green Investment because Tembec is just going to basically do the cleanup that they were ordered to do and no real economic opportunities going forward. We'll have to go through a whole nother process in acquiring the lands and through tax registrations and so on and so forth. So we were excited about the opportunity with Green Investment, but we're not so excited about the opportunities with Tembec going forward. So we'll see how that unfolds.
According to the Ministry of the Environment, Tembec is now free to pursue other offers, but Ministry Representative Lisa Brigadier says MOE's priority is ensuring Tembec remains on the hook for the cleanup.
The Ministry of the Environment has ensured that there is a responsible party that remains today responsible for the site and responsible for the environmental requirements at the property. And this will ensure that the town of Marathon and the taxpayers of Ontario are not left with an abandoned property.
Tembec was unavailable for comment. As for the Green Investment Group, President Ray Stillwell says it has every intention to close the transaction in the near future, and that it's taking what it calls several approaches to satisfy the conditions of the Ministry of the Environment. John Thompson, TBT News.
The size of Dryden's budget deficit has doubled. The mayor and city manager held a press conference Wednesday morning to announce the city is facing a $4 million deficit as it goes into its 2014 budget planning. That's an increase of $2 million since November. They attribute the increase to a newly discovered $1 million accounting error made in 2011. There has also been a $1 million drop in tax revenues due to the reassessment of Dryden's Domtar Mill. Well, despite a heated battle against the federal government, veteran affairs offices across the country have been shut down. 8 service outlets, including the office in Thunder Bay, closed their doors for good on Friday afternoon. But before they did, local veterans and supporters held a memorial service outside the doors of the office to signify the loss of services. Rochelle El-Soufi reports.
Who are upset with the closure of the Veterans Affairs Office? Can I hear you?
Local veterans and supporters made their way from Branch 5 Legion on Van Norman Street, braving the cold weather to march to the Veterans Affairs Regional Office and pay their last respects. They say the closure means veterans will no longer receive face-to-face service in Thunder Bay. New options for service include contacting the Service Canada office or using mobile phone apps or the internet, which for some older veterans feels like an impossible task.
If they think that these fellows 89 and 93 are up are going to be the best guys on computers, that's wrong.
It was a well-attended memorial service, and there were many veterans there to voice their opinions opposing the federal government's decision. A small contingent visited the employees at the office one last time and placed a wreath on the floor there. Afghanistan war veteran Robin Rickards explains what he thinks the real tragedy behind this closure is.
If the government's willing to balance the books on the backs of veterans who fought for their country, been wounded, and require the services that are given out or that are handled by Veterans Affairs, who won't they balance the books on the back of?
As of 4:30 Friday, the nearest veterans office will be located in either Winnipeg or North Bay, which some local veterans say is shameful.
This is what I think of the Conservative government. A government can treat the veterans that fought for their jobs right today, their job, not mine, their jobs, and to sit there and say, goodbye, Joe. And that really hurts us because those jobs, if we didn't do our job on whether it was the front, the air, or on land or sea, they wouldn't have a job.
This might be the end of the Veteran Affairs Office here in Thunder Bay, but the fight to restore the service will not come to a close. Their next step will be organizing a petition drive. Rochelle Sufi, TBT News.
The Northwest Region OPP say they're continuing to investigate a frightening highway incident that was caught on video and is now spreading on social media. The dashboard camera video shows a close call between two transports, and police are looking for the offending driver.
What the hell are you doing? No! No! No!
The transport traveling on Highway 11 north of Nipigon was run into the guardrail when an oncoming transport attempted to pass a snowplow. OPP Staff Sergeant Ken Manty says the January 4th incident was reported to police after the other transport failed to remain at the scene. Manty says this video is admissible as evidence and the footage is being enhanced to try to find the license plate number.
Specific investigation because there's still lots to do, and I don't know all the factors involved in this investigation but just from the video viewpoint, depending on what happened, we could go, there's a range of charges from criminal code, dangerous driving, to under the HGA, careless, or at minimum an unsafe pass. But on this specific investigation, it's too early to determine what exactly charge we would lay.
The OPP receives numerous complaints about dangerous passes on area highways. Manty is asking anyone with information about this incident to contact Nipigon OPP. Well, stay with us. A regional company has been cleared from paying back $29 million. Details when we return. A forestry company that owed tens of millions of dollars to taxpayers is off the hook. Buchanan Forest Products, through a number of different company names, was in debt to the province for $29 million in stumpage fees. But officials with the Ministry of Natural Resources confirmed the money will never be collected. At one time, Buchanan owned and operated 8 mills across northwestern Ontario. In 2009, all of them had been idled and staff let go when the various companies went into receivership. The forestry licenses held by different Buchanan companies were terminated between 2011 and 2013. Officials at the M&R say the government did not forgive the $29 million owed, but the debt was, quote, wound down at different times as a result of the outcomes of individual bankruptcies. All uncollectible debt owned by the bankrupt Buchanan companies was written in late June of last year. The $29 million is in addition to a $24 million government loan to Buchanan that was forgiven. That money was used to restart Terrace Bay Pulp. The mayor of Greenstone doesn't think a different route into the Ring of Fire would negatively impact his municipality. Cliffs Natural Resources was the key to a proposed north-south route that would have gone right through a number of communities in Greenstone. But Cliffs has put an indefinite halt on its proposed chromite project. An east-west road is now before regulators following the submission of an environmental assessment by Noront Resources. Rather than running south from the Ring of Fire to Greenstone, Noront's all-season road would travel through Pickle Lake. The company proposes locating a transload facility near Savant Lake. Greenstone Mayor Ron Beaulieu feels it's possible to have both the east-west and the north-south transportation networks.
At the end of the day, I could see a loop there. I could see that whole loop, and that would develop all of northwestern Ontario. That's been talked about now since the discussion of the Ring of Fire. So it's all positive.
Noront Resources feels their proposed Eagle's Nest mine will be the first to move ahead in the Ring of Fire. Mining Minister Michael Gravel says he's excited to see Noront moving ahead, but says no preferred route has been selected.
On one route being chosen over another, we're determined to make the best decision, the right decision, the one that will allow the project to move forward. And clearly other factors at play are how can we make sure that this is a significant value-added benefit to the First Nations? How can we look at perhaps having community access in terms of infrastructure to First Nations?
Gravel says one of the reasons a Ring of Fire Development Corporation is so important is to have all of the players involved to discuss the best transportation link. The head of the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association feels it's time to throw support behind Noront Resources' proposed Ring of Fire project. Dave Canfield believes politicians overhyped the chromite project proposed by Cliffs, and at a NOMA executive meeting on Wednesday, a plan was also pitched to tackle a challenge facing EMS. But as Dennis Ward reports, there's no money for the proposed solution.
Despite the hype, NOMA President Dave Canfield says some within his organization believe the Cliffs Chromite project was never moving ahead. But Canfield says there is a company committed to pushing forward in the Ring of Fire, and that's Noront Resources. The company was ready and willing to use a north-south corridor as proposed by Cliffs, but in its recently released environmental assessment, Noront has gone back to its preferred east-west transportation corridor.
I think we all eventually realize that there will be more of a circle road. It'll go, east-west. That's ready to go now, so let's jump on that one, and it'll probably come right around. And so you're going to have, that just makes sense. If you look at any infrastructure and if you're going to connect the communities, if you're going to connect the dots, that's how you're going to have to do it. But it's where do you start? Well, you start where the work has been done and where strike where the iron's hot, and it's hot right there right now.
At its annual general meeting last year, NOMA members aired their frustration with senior levels of government over a lack of movement on the Ring of Fire. Canfield doesn't see that happening this year. He says Premier Kathleen Wynne is much more committed than Dalton McGuinty. NOMA will be making a Roads to Resources pitch to provincial politicians next month. Another challenge that will be pushed at the coming Good Roads Conference is a solution for non-urgent transportation. Superior North EMS Chief Norm Gale has put together a new strategy.
In the city of Thunder Bay, there would be an alternate entity of some fashion that would be not paramedics and not ambulances, but let's say transportation technicians that would move patients between facilities. This would be much more efficient and it would be much more reliable because these calls would not have to compete with 911 calls.
It's going to be around $1 million to set up this non-urgent patient transfer. You can't keep tying up ambulances and stuff. We know that. The lens is on side. The money's not there. Bring the money.
Dennis Ward, TBT News.
Canada's largest private sector union's president made a stop this week in our region. Details on that story and more right after the break. The president of Canada's largest private sector union was in Thunder Bay on Wednesday to prepare for a nationwide campaign. Unifor leaders met with local union members to discuss how they plan on defending the rights of Canadians in the workplace. Courtney Rutherford reports.
When you start to eliminate unions and weaken unions, it lowers the standards right across the country.
Unifor President Jerry Dias isn't afraid to show his frustrations when it comes to what he calls a political crisis.
Working people are under the biggest attack by the right that they've ever had in the history of the country. This is really about what our country is going to look like. This is about jobs for young people. This is about making sure that we preserve the middle class. So we're going to have a good discussion about it, and we're going to have something to say about it.
The discussions Dias is talking about are taking place in 20 Canadian cities. The talks revolve around Unifor's protest against the federal government's Bill C-525. The bill, also known as the Employees Voting Rights Act, proposes changes to the rules for forming and dissolving unions. Dominic Pasqualino is a Local 1075 president. He says unions are the backbone of our society.
People are realizing that you just can't leave big business to take care of things, because at the end of the day, they're just going to take care of their own interests. I think it's important that working people take care of their interests so that it's good for society in general.
The CAW and CEP unions merged last spring to form Unifor. The union represents 300,000 people across Canada in more than 20 sectors. Pasqualino says it's about coming together to build a strategy.
Certainly don't want the Conservative government in power. They have admitted that they're going to go and hurt the working class people, and we're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen.
The Unifor leaders also made a stop in Sudbury and will finish their national tour in St. John's on February 27th. Courtney Rutherford, TPT News.
Thunder Bay Superior North Member of Parliament Bruce Heyer has a new role with the Greens. Party leader Elizabeth May has announced that Heyer will assume the role of the party's deputy leader. May says Heyer will be instrumental in promoting the party's policy initiatives in the House. In a release, Heyer says he's honored by the appointment and that it will enhance his ability to raise concerns of interest to his constituents. Heyer officially joined the Green Party last month. According to across the region, the Ontario Provincial Police say it has received an abnormally high number of complaints over people drinking alcohol in ice huts. The police are reminding the public it's illegal to consume alcohol inside of an ice hut unless there is legitimate sleeping and heating facilities as defined under the Ontario Liquor Act. It's also illegal to drink outside of an ice hut, which is considered drinking in public. Northwest OPP spokesperson Sergeant Shelley Garr says while there hasn't been a snowmobile fatality in the region this winter, 30% of Ontario snow machine fatalities occur under the influence of alcohol, and she says it's a matter of keeping people safe.
Our concern is people who go out for the day and they're drinking in these ice huts, they're drinking alcohol, and then they're getting back in their vehicles at the end of the day and driving away. So we want to remind the public that we're out there for safety reasons. We want to make sure everyone gets home safely and that they're not consuming alcohol while they're out there.
The Winter Roads Network in Northern Ontario has officially opened. The almost 3,200 kilometers of roads help to connect 28 remote communities to the permanent provincial highway system. This allows for the transportation of much-needed goods to these communities, as well as easier access to health care. Provincial officials say cold weather in December and January have led to an earlier than usual opening of the ice road network. They will remain in service until the spring thaw. Well, thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.